Appreciate all you taking the time to be here with us. We've got a really great discussion happening today. We've got some great guests on, and obviously, as you can see, what we're going over today is the future of workplace management for multi-location brands, as well as those brands looking to grow into multi-location brands. One thing I want to mention before we get into everything is we're going to run through these sections. We'll have questions for our guests, our experts, but you'll be coming up with questions as we go through this discussion as well. I want to invite you guys to put those into the Q&A box as they come to mind. And then at the end of this, we'll have an open Q&A time slot, and we'll go through some of those questions, get as many of them answered for you as we can. I'm going to be your host today. My name's Adam Ferris. I work at ClubReady. I've been with ClubReady for about 10 years now and spent 15 years prior running different gyms for 24-Hour Fitness and Snap Fitness, a couple others. We've also got Erika Wasser on with us. She's the CEO and co-founder of Prospr. We've got Liz Roberts with us, owner of Redbird Fitness LLC. She owns and operates 10 different gym locations in the East Coast. And then we've got Jesse Lopez with us, CEO of XGT Fitness and owner of multiple locations. Some of the topics we're going to be really drilling into today include why workforce management has become such a major operational conversation, the shift from hiring more people to operating more effectively, and what operators are being forced to rethink as they scale. So these are all things we want to touch on and have some discussions on. I want to start with a question for Erika. Erika, how has workforce management changed over the last few years as you've seen it?
I think we, especially in a post-COVID world, are really thinking much more about what do our team members need versus simply what do we want from them as ownership, right? And so we, are obviously in a corporate stance changing how we interact with our employees. So a lot of people are allowing work from home. A lot of people are doing Monday, Fridays, hybrid, right? And in the frontline world and in our world, I think we're really starting to invest and take seriously the tools and what their experience is as an employee as well, in a much more impactful way than we have before. And that's exciting.
Awesome. Jesse, I want to hear from you. Why has team management become such a major operating focus?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think, to start, I think for most boutique concepts or fitness studios out there, it's because it's expensive, right? So we want to maximize what we're getting out of our staff. Not only how they serve us, but how we serve them so that they stay with us for a long time. So it's, giving them the tools or resources so that they can perform really well for our studios.
Awesome. Is there anything that's worked really well for you recently that you can highlight?
Yeah, I think, better communication. I think communication is key. I think a lot of times what's the saying, training is not something that you did, it's something you do, right? So doing it every day, communicating with them every day, being that, chief reminding officer, reminding them about the things that move the needle for us and improve member experience too. So communication, I would say, is number one.
Awesome. Liz, what are operators being forced to rethink right now as they scale? I mean, you've grown to 10 locations, so I think you would have the perfect perspective there for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you scale, you really have to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. And often it's the merger of systems and technology operational processes. So, often as you scale, you're trying to eliminate human error and that is now with technology. How can we streamline things? How can we work smarter, and just get the most out of the employees we have? So you're constantly rethinking, okay, how can we be more efficient? How can we be more efficient so we can just do the task at hand? And in the gym world, that's often, interacting on a, in-person level and not worrying about what the system's doing in the back end. So, I think that is when you're scaling, you're just really trying to make it super efficient.
Awesome. Wh- Did you run across any roadblocks or bumps along the way as you were scaling and using the technologies in that fashion?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the first road bumps I came across when I scaled from 1 to 3 locations was, the bottleneck of a manager approving shift swaps, right? You've got one person. And so kind of trying to find a partner in a technology of how to do that faster, which is, now we're using Prospr to do that, of how to swap a shift. We've got, in a gym, you have the majority of people are part-time employees. And so they've got a lot of other things and they're constantly swapping and you can't be the bottleneck for that. So that's a great instance of where you can use technology. Somebody can't just be telling a manager via, verbally or via text or via this messaging platform that, hey, I need to switch Friday night. So streamlining that using technology so that the human error comes out so that we have somebody that shows up for class. They know they're showing up for class and they show up on time is a good example.
Awesome. Erica, do you have anything to add?
You
I saw
know,
you come off mute.
no, I came off mute just because I thought I was supposed to, but um, we have loved watching how Jesse and Liz both use Prosper, right? And to Jesse's point of communication, the way that they're communicating all of the sorts of moving parts of their business and all of the, Liz obviously has a lot more physical locations than employees. And so the way that they're utilizing Prosper. And so, we're just super excited to support them both.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to move on to another topic here, talking about different operational breakdowns that occur during growth, how you've dealt with those, overcome them, things like that. Liz, I want to come back to you. What typically breaks when a business grows to 10 locations and more?
Yeah, and Jesse kind of said this in his answer before, but it's communication, right? You're only one person, so you start hiring a team, and then that's where more communication can break down. So, and communication isn't also just verbal, it's the written communication, it's following the procedures of communication and how we do that. And so, that's what breaks. And so having, systems and partners that help streamline communication and for me as the owner, I've got 200 employees on the platform that are constantly trying to communicate. So I'm trying to corral them, if you will, and make sure that the communication's happening in the right platform, in the right manner, in the right tone, right? And so having oversight over a communication system is really helpful in making sure that it goes in there. Often I say, if I don't see it in our channel that we're talking in, then I can't help you. So it's got to go through the appropriate channel, so that systems don't break down. And communication, really is a broad word, but it's about having what breaks down are processes, but the processes break down because they're not communicated well or followed well.
Awesome. Erica, where do operators lose visibility as they scale?
I think to Liz's point, it's not so much just the disseminating of information, but making sure that then the thing is actually getting done, right? Communication doesn't stop just because you said it. It stops when the thing is executed and executed with excellence. And so making sure that you are not only able to deliver information, but you're able to follow up on the efficacy of the communication, that you're able to hold your team accountable to knowing and being able to execute. I think those are sort of the big pieces that typically get lost in the sauce.
Awesome. Do you have an example maybe of how Prosper can kind of help bridge
Absolutely.
that?
Right. And you guys, please chime in and feel free to unmute yourselves because I did. Um,
I
But
unmuted myself.
okay, good. I was alone for a while. So in Prosper, and you guys can talk about this as well. When you post a bulletin, you get full read receipts. There are e-signatures on bulletins should you want something that is extra important to have extra importance. In our task management system, you literally go through and you can see who did what when. You can see on a progress scale of 0 to 100 where your team is on a day. You can have one-on-one checklists, group checklists. So you're really able to systematize in a way that is um, pretty foolproof, right? Because if someone says I did something and the thing's not done, right? There's no, I don't know, nobody told me. You're now managing a completely different issue that you know how to manage, right? And your team has a better shot at succeeding.
Yeah, and I think what I would add on the ticketing system that Erika has with Prospr is great. So people communicate issues all the time, but if it's not followed through on, it's lost. With the ticketing system, you can't miss it. And if you have a GM that's in charge, or you then have a desk person that is working and they don't put it in the ticketing system, then it's lost. But if it's put in the ticketing system, it can't be lost. So it could come all the way to me where I can log in the morning and be like, hey, why are your tickets overdue? Right? Somebody's not doing their job. And an overdue ticket leads to staff being unhappy, clients leaving, right? Something bad happening. So that's where they break. So, we can use the word communication, but really it's a tasking system that it's not lost in communication. It's put into a task that we can see all the way from the owner side of all the locations of like, hey, these tasks aren't being done on time. And, if somebody wants to freeze their membership and nobody gets back to them, they're just going to cancel their membership. So it's really a nice system to see, hey, this is a critical ticket that we need to fix.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, like, it's not just having the information, it's organizing that information. Because a lot of times as leaders, I think we find ourselves answering the same questions 20 times in a month. And, sometimes if we can organize all the information in one place using technology, it makes it a lot easier to scale when we hire more staff or we open a new location. I think it makes it a lot smoother and enjoyable for not only the employees, the members, but also the leaders. You don't have to repeat it 30 times. It's there and it's ready for somebody to take on. So it makes it easier.
It's a great segue to my next question, and it's for you then, Jesse. Where do you feel managers are spending too much time today?
Yeah, I mean, my team included, sometimes we find ourselves hunting down information. That old PDF that we made 5 years ago, that's a really great system and process, but it's still a PDF or a PowerPoint in some file somewhere on a computer, and is digging through that, right? Digging through that information and, bringing it to date. So I think it's that finding information. So I think organizing now, we're in a different era of for actually, I'll speak for XGT, where we're using a lot of technology to organize our systems. Prospr being one of those tools, it helps us organize our systems and really deploy the information to our staff very seamlessly through a phone, from wherever we're at. So that I think is it. I think some years ago we would spend, I think, getting ready for an onboarding of a new employee, whether it was a sales staff member or a trainer, would take up to close to a month, right? And I think a lot of times getting the information itself would take a day or two. Do you remember where that PowerPoint was at? Who has it? Who has a USB or the file? So I think that kind of stuff, we don't have to do today because of technology, which is really cool.
Awesome. Erika, with all the different brands that you've worked with now, what are some of the operational challenges that you kind of still see being manual that you wouldn't expect to still be manual processes?
So Prosper tries to digitize as much as humanly possible, and I think we do a lot of it. The one piece still seems to be ordering inventory. I still see a lot of checklists and paper for inventory.
Okay, awesome. Um, so I want to move to this next section here and talk about some turnover. It's something that all gyms experience. It's been a part of the fitness industry since day one. There's multiple reasons for it. I think getting ahead of it and creating retention initiatives and understanding the reasons employees leave are key to maintaining a strong workforce while you're growing. Um, uh, Jesse, I want to hear from you. What do you feel operators get wrong about retention?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think what I've seen is, and me included, I've been guilty of this, where I think it's all about the money. I think fitness is one of those industries that we all do because we love people and we love, the fitness world and helping others. And I think we sometimes are disconnected from that, and when we look at our staff, we think it's just about how much money we pay them. And that's why they leave. But oftentimes it's the environment, it's the culture. I think it's us as leaders, helping them grow. Also, not just as staff members, but as people. So really caring about them, understanding, what goals they have for their lives. There's a middle ground where you can align with them and help support them so they can support you. I think that people care about that, and I think nobody likes to suck at their job, right? Everybody wants to do good because it feels good. And I think that's what a lot of times we get wrong, is we think it's just about how much we pay them, and if we pay them more, that they'll stay longer and do better. But I think a lot of times if we improve their experience, right? I think a lot of times we think of the member experience a lot in our world, right? How do we improve a client experience to increase retention there? But we have to think about, are there some things that we can do for our staff members to improve their onboarding experience, to make their experience a lot better as staff members? And I think that's helped us personally a lot. And I've seen other operators right now really, hone in on that and see some really good improvements with staff retention.
Is there anything that you've done that has really stood out and been really successful?
Yeah, I think inspecting what we expect. So sometimes, when it's in going back to information and old PDFs out there, if we don't have an organized onboarding system for staff members, sometimes we forget, right, the expectation, and we go in and inspect and say, hey, why wasn't this done? And that can cause frustration. So I think better communication has helped, and improving, like the way we deliver their training, so they know exactly what we expect from them. So they're never surprised, right? They're never surprised, like, hey, I didn't know I was supposed to. They know exactly what the job is, how to do the job, and how to perform it really well. So I think that alone, the communication with that and the way we deliver that information today is really helped, for sure.
Awesome. Liz, I mentioned before, turnover has been a big thing in the fitness industry since day one. Why do you think that it's still so high across this industry?
Well, I mean, I think it's high because often, at least in my studios, where, the people working the front desk are generally making around minimum wage, maybe a little bit more. And we are a stepping stone. We often hire young women to work the front desk. They love Pure Barre generally. So they're there, as Jesse said, it's not really always about the money. It's about a job. They certainly need the money, but they've picked us because they want to be part of the culture. They want to take the classes. They want to be part of the community. But in reality, I don't, I guess I'm of the mindset that I've accepted the turnover of that position because we're hiring somebody that's in school, or that is, yeah, we have some people that, are set in their life and this is just what they want to do. But the majority, this is their first job, their third job, but it's not their career path, right? And so I've accepted that, and I know that I'll have them for, a couple years. I've had people that have, aspirations to be the general manager, so they want to grow, right? There's, the position of our front desk, our sales associates, those kind of positions, they're really growing towards something. So that turnover doesn't bother me. I think kind of what Jesse said, what we try to do is make onboarding as smooth as possible. We use technology like we're talking about today to make their job really plug and play, so that we can replace them easy, right? And we usually have, like, it's pretty easy for us to replace them, and not in a bad way. People want to work for us. They want to be part of the culture. And so, using technology to make it seamless is really what we look at. I think trainers are a bit different. Jesse called them trainers. We call them teachers at my studios. And we keep them for a long time. Most of them, most women that leave, what we're majority women, there that teach our modality, and they might leave because they become new mothers and it's too much, or they move. We don't get a lot that just leave. They love teaching it. It's more about the culture and the brand. They want to do it. They're compensated well. And we will get turnover when our systems are broken and they're unhappy with communication, and they're unhappy with some more of a culture issue, which we certainly have faced. And so I think why it's high, I mean, I just think it's the nature of the beast in our industry of who we're attracting to work the desk. I think the fitness professionals that want to be, coaches, trainers, teachers, whatever you call them, they're in it for the long haul, as long as it works for their life, whatever if they have a full-time job or their families. So I don't see as high of an attrition of those staff. That answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned when you were talking about the front desk crew that some of them do aspire to be a teacher, trainer, or general manager. Is that something that you kind of promote within those
Yeah,
ranks that
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
tell them, hey, there's a path here and help guide them?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. More often they want to become teachers of the modality. They want to become Pure Barre teachers, and generally they're good at that point. We know them well, we know their personality, we still audition them. There are instances where we know they don't have the skill set for it, sure. But usually, if a person's a good person and can do it, then they're going to be good with like caring about our clients and helping them get their goals. So a good front desk person would be a great hire. And then as they grow, if they're great and I have an opening for GM, I would absolutely, audition them, let them interview for the job. And I love an internal hire because they know, they know everything. They know the systems, but they also know the culture. And in fitness, I think it's much easier. I don't think of it as sales when we actually believe in the product and we believe in what we're selling, then it's just helping people. And so that's really what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people reach their goals. And it's a lot better when people believe in the brand and believe in our technique.
Awesome. Erika, how much of the turnover do you think is operationally preventable?
I mean, a good bit, right? We can't keep somebody from moving. We can't keep somebody from becoming a new mom, nor would we want to. But um, 81% of employees leave for like minor skirmishes, right? It was a communication that didn't go the way they wanted to, or they didn't get the shift schedules that they wanted to, or they didn't have the shift flexibility that they needed. Right? And especially in fitness, when our employees are very typically also students or also songwriters or also working at other gyms. Keeping everything transparent, keeping everything consolidated, and keeping everything in the palm of their hands moves the needle.
Awesome.
It makes a real impact. Liz got kicked off, but she's coming back on.
Sorry, I'm back.
There she is. Awesome. All right, so I want to move on.
Turnover, there goes Liz. But
I
that's
want to
okay.
move on to another topic now. We've got some pretty successful people here with us today, and as athletes, we all want to learn from the best to be the best. So I want the team to tell us kind of some of the characteristics of high-performing operators, what the operators look like, what the businesses look like. Um, First, Erika, Liz, Jesse, all of you feel free to jump in and answer this one. It's kind of just to the group, but what separates high-performing operators from everyone else? Erika, I got to hear what you have to say because yeah, I
I
want
have
to
an
hear your
opinion.
answer.
I have an opinion, and I think Jesse and Liz both exemplify this. Good leadership requires strong direction, right? Like when we see leaders be like, well, I'm going to talk to my team. Let me see what everybody feels about it. And it's just like kumbaya nonsense. Nothing gets done, right? Like there's a difference between getting buy-in from your team and like being a and not leading. right? And so, like, the leaders that we see succeed are the ones who say, this is how we do things. This is what our policies are. This is what I expect from you. This is what I need it. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's having, vision casting with your team and having direction for sure. I think that gives them the confidence to be high performers too. Like, whether as owners, we have managers underneath us and they're leaders themselves to the team is, yeah, vision casting and creating, this is the standard and this is what's expected. And I think sometimes too, we confuse it. We think that if we are, open and what do you think? What should we do? That people like that, but people don't like that. In my experience, I've been, when I was a younger leader, I was that way. That's why I was laughing a little bit, because you open it thinking like, man, if I'm that kind of leader, people are going to really love me and listen to me and do well for me. But no, people want direction. People want you to be a strong, confident leader and have vision, and they will follow that and they will do a good job when you do that. So I love that.
Yeah, I would also say that you have to have strong direction, but you have to stay curious and open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as we're talking here a lot about how to operate more efficiently, I think we have a vision, right? But I also am open to being like, if you know how to do it better, often my staff will laugh because I'm like, if you don't tell me that you have a better idea in the meeting, like that's like a fireable offense. Like you need to speak up and tell me because I don't want to hear, oh, I thought that, but I didn't tell you, right? Like I might not agree with you, but at least I'd like you to bring it to the table because there could be a better way. So, as we're taking like, I want my staff to be curious of like, hey, can we do this better? Is there a way to do this more efficiently? Is this the part that's taking you too long in the day? Let's rethink how we do that. So I'm asking them to continually be curious about the job and be like, what is like, as we use Prosper, for example, you're building out new tools. There's other things what can we do to make this platform work better for us, work smarter for us? So that curiosity and not just, well, we do it this way, right? It's like, well, no, just because we do it this way doesn't mean it's the most efficient. Like technology is ever changing. So I really say, I think the high performers are curious and their staff has that culture of being able to be like, hey, I think that we can do this better this way. So, I often see my job as, okay, bring me your issues, bring me your problems, and I will solve that. I will find a platform like Prosper, like whatever I'm using, like how do I make this part of your job easier? We talk about technology. I've got it. So I link the way they do payroll links right through. So it's like, a couple buttons, it's integrated. Now that took a lot of work in the background for me to figure out, but it was how to save them time so that they can talk to members, hear about their goals and sell fitness. So I would just, as we say, like you got to have a vision and a direction, but I think you have to be curious and open-minded and always look for operational excellence.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I'll share something real quick. Well, I love that you said that. Recently, it reminded me we used Prosper, of course, and a staff member brought this up. We were trying to improve member retention and their experience when they come in members, and they brought up this wild idea that we take a picture of that new client, upload it to our bulletin, and we introduce that member and we write a little paragraph about hey, Liz is our newest member at XGT and they want to do this and that and gain strength because of this. So it's so funny, like when that customer now comes in, and even though they haven't met the other 7 coaches, those coaches have met that member, and that first impression just becomes so much more impactful, and that was an idea that a staff member had, and I've never thought of that. Let's try it and see if it actually helps, and we've been doing it for a few months now, and you can tell. I mean, people just the reviews that we get now rave about that. Like, I had never met Fernando, the coach, but he knew that I wanted to lose 15 pounds and that my right knee is, messed up. Right. So I think those are things sometimes that I probably wouldn't have thought of maybe in a year or so, but somebody else brought it up. So it's really cool.
That's a great use case for bulletins. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You'll see it on there. Yeah, there's so much stuff now. It's every few days. It's cool.
Awesome. Liz, I want to jump back to you, with as many locations as you have, how did you create consistency across those locations and then maintain it?
I mean, it's a constant job to maintain it,
Right.
right? I think it's systems, right? Having processes in place and expectations. I have a operations manager, and her job is to make sure that they are adhering to all the systems, right? So whenever I build a new system, I create a checks and balance so that, like, I always I'm always on repeat. I'm like, okay, how do we close the circle? This is great, but how do we close the circle to make sure that it's happening? Like, we can't just put it out there and think it's going to happen. We have to close it, and there's got to be a check that says, okay, yes, this was done. So as I build things, I'm always building the team to finish the circle so when it breaks, somebody knows it breaks. And so I think that's what helps us, right? So that when it breaks, we're at least aware of the break. We can fix the break. Sometimes it takes a long time to fix that break, depending on what's broken. But we have a process in place at least to notice the break, because that's learned over time. Because every time something breaks, I'm like, okay, we have a broken system. Let's fix it. So, I think, as operators, it's so easy to be like, oh, that won't happen again. But I've always said, like, okay, no, we just gotta, it's kind of like you gotta fix it now. It's kind of like take the 5 minutes to clean the messy drawer. Don't just shut the messy drawer. So every time that happens, I'm like, okay, what broke down to cause this? And let's fix that so it doesn't happen again.
Awesome. Jesse, not being able to be in every location all the time, how do you create visibility without making your staff feel like they're micromanaged all the time?
Yeah, I think right now, recently we went through it. We have a VAs that we use for outbound phone calls for sales appointments. And, a lot of times we could, instead of saying, hey, you're not making enough phone calls to give me X result, we're talking about, the outcome instead, managing the outcome, not the actual, the activity, how many calls, how many messages. Instead, hey, we're not performing here. What are we doing right now to get there? And what do you think we could do better, right? So instead of hey, we're not making enough phone calls, we're not doing enough outbound, what can we do better? What are we doing now? And finding the holes with them instead of just asking about the phone calls every day.
Awesome. Erika, to you, what does operational accountability look like at scale?
I think much to Jesse and Liz's point, it's that when something breaks, you know that it's broken. You know who touched it. You actually can see a log and track where is this broken? Why is this broken? When is this getting fixed? Who is fixing it in a way that is clear, in a way that is efficient, we're in a way where it doesn't stay broken for too long,
Awesome.
right? So I think those are the big pieces. Things are going to break, but if you could identify them, hold someone accountable, rightly or wrongly, and fix it quickly, right? That's the goal. So like that's why we have our joint mission system. That's why we have our ticketing system. It's why you have read receipts on bulletins and chats and resources and all of the pieces of Prospr that really work together. That is the goal.
Awesome. Liz, in your experience, what systems or processes do you feel create the biggest operational lift?
Well, I'm using Prospr. It's a huge operational lift. I have used other platforms in the past, multiple platforms, but having onboarding a staff and having everything in one app for them, because they were going to majority use, if you're not their teaching staff are using it on their phone. So right now I switch my messagings to them. So like the messaging platforms are all there, so we can see what's going on through all the threads. Their schedule is there. It's easily, you can swap shifts. It's all there. We use their calendar function. So if I have a meeting, I'm scheduling somebody, I throw it on their calendar. If we're interviewing we're using it to the max. We're interviewing a new candidate to teach. We'll set that appointment up with that person who's interviewing them in that studio, so that when they pull it up, they know exactly what's happening in their day. We have their events, like we're using this playlist on, this holiday. It's right here. Here's your link. We're trying to use the platform to its max so that it's all there. And then, I think I mean, right now that's going to be the biggest operational lift for that. I mean, other than that, we're using, your classic Google Drive for resources and back end. But the goal is to have our systems be small for onboarding, if that makes sense. Not small is not the right word, but like less systems. So, the less we have like, okay, we do this on this and this on this on this on this and this over here, it's confusing. So we're trying to streamline everything always to one system so that the resources are there. Prospr has a resource section, so I just link everything there so that, you have a question, I can say, oh, it's right here in the resources and direct them right there. So right now, Prospr is doing the best, operational lift, for that. I mean, other than like my back end business stuff is a different thing. But for our client face and what we're talking about today, this is the partner that I'm choosing.
Awesome. So I want to stay kind of on this topic, but pivot from the operator perspective over to more staff and get an understanding of how to establish a really high performing, loyal team. Jesse, what have you done or seen that really improves staff performance long term?
Yeah, I think for us, it has been creating a culture of constant coaching. I think about it the same as we do with clients. I think of our trainers or our leaders as clients in a way where we're always teaching them, coaching them, and making that clear from the start that that is the culture of our organization, that we're always trying to improve experience, not only for them, but for members. And I think that makes them more open to feedback all the time, right? How do we make this thing better? Where can we improve and improve the process or the system or whatever service that we're offering at that time, and it creates that culture. It's funny, like, I think I said this earlier, training is something that, you do, not something you did. And sometimes we get so stuck on, oh, we already trained these staff members to do that. Why are we having to train them again? But people they're humans, right? So it's our job as leaders. I believe that we consistently train them over and over, and that keeps them sharp, and it keeps them also open. Now when if I'm in a studio and a coach sees me come in and they're done coaching, it's funny, they come up to me themselves and they say, hey, what do you think of my coaching? How did I do? Anything you think I could do better? And it's funny because that's just now the culture. They're used to that. They want the feedback. But, it wasn't always like that. I think that when we started that with the new staff members that we bring on, it stays with them and they're used to it. And it helps overall the brand just improve for sure.
Amazing. Erika, what are some things you're seeing leading brands do differently as far as onboarding and training?
I think, aside from using Prospr, of course, they, they're very goals and outcomes oriented in what they want from their team. And they include their team on why something matters versus just do it this way. Right? If you can really culturally include everyone down to your newest front desk employee on why something matters, they're going to care a whole lot more.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one that we see.
So, Liz, how do you empower your teams without creating an added level of complexity for you and your leaders?
Well, the way I operate my model is I have a manager at each location. So I'm really empowering the manager. When I hire them, I say it's very entrepreneurial, right? I don't want to micromanage. So we set up the systems and empower them to use the systems. Now we have our checks and balances to know when they're failing at the systems. And then, I mean, you can't say how do we empower them without, saying like, well, we compensate for a win-win structure also, right? They're empowered to do well because it also behooves them, right? But outside of money, I think that they love the culture and they feel empowered in the way we run the brand, where they have a voice, we listen to everybody. We try to keep it pretty flat at the top so they feel that, Anybody can send me a message. We take care of them. And they feel heard and seen and valued. And so, I think that is possible because we've structured it in a team-like manner and they feel that the systems work and they're not, like a hamster running on a wheel. They're seeing forward progress always. And so I think that's what keeps them empowered. And it's a culture, that to always keep that positive and keep how can we keep doing better and just, but also like, not pressured in a negative way.
Cool. Jesse, you've talked about onboarding a couple times. What role does ongoing training play in retention?
Oh, I think ongoing training is retention. I think I think I said this earlier in the call too. Nobody likes to suck at their job. And I think, when they are getting that training always and they know that they're doing, and there's also feedback, open communication for feedback, and they feel confident doing their job, I think that it makes it enjoyable and it makes them want to stay longer. I think that it becomes important for them to feel confident at their job. They enjoy showing up every day, and it makes it not only better for them, but I think for our clients too. But yeah, I think in my opinion, training is, the ongoing training is the retention.
What does that look like for you? Is that hands-on training while they're in the facility? Do you have an area where there are resources available to them to continue education or learn more about maybe the business in general to grow within the business?
Yeah, I think we're big voice note people in Prospr. I love the voice notes because as a texter, I'm a voice note kind of guy. And we use that pretty much every day. Like every night, we're posting about member wins. We're posting about, where another staff member did great here, and we're giving them shout outs that the management team is. And and everybody becomes a cheerleader for them. And I think that that's been really key for them to feel good about what they're doing every day. And yeah, so every night, basically, there's some sort of information going out. Even when we launch new products, it's just being very communicative. And I enjoy voice. I love obviously documenting things, but the voice notes, I think, I think that excitement too. They can hear your tone and how excited you are for what they've done for the team or for that day. And I think that's really very helpful.
Awesome. Liz, do you have anything to add to that? I just want to give you a shot with as many people as I'm sure you've trained.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with Jesse. It's ongoing, right? And that's probably is retention. I think that training is different for the front desk than it is for teachers. We have like a training team that we're involved with. We're just trying to, continue to develop, continue to train as people get, further along in the technique. There's that training. And then there's the front desk training. And, I think, Jesse, you said it a couple of times now, nobody wants to be bad at their job, right? And so it's always taking things to the positive, I think like, using Jesse's example of call log, if calls aren't happening, it's trying to understand why calls aren't happening, right? We've had an issue with younger staff not being comfortable making a phone call and defaulting to text. And it's then, coaching them on the if you're trying to sell a 60-year-old woman on this technique, she's expecting a phone call. And, it's that coaching right there that happens. And it's like, you will learn from the conversation as well. Here's some scripts to guide you. Don't say them verbatim, right? But it's that coaching through it. And I always say, like, that person has left the front desk, this young woman, and she now knows how to have a conversation with an adult that she didn't before, right? And so that training has helped her for life, hopefully, right? But, as this example, it's just ongoing of how to do them. But it usually starts from we see something in our process isn't going well for this particular employee. How do we make it better? And not by like slapping them on the wrist. It's like, okay, tell me what's happening here, right? Let's coach you through how to do this job better.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Erika, with Prospr, what are some of the things that you do to kind of ramp up new locations faster?
Yeah, no, I mean, new locations ramp faster because you have a foundational platform, right? So when everything is in one place and all locations are operating out of one hub, for lack of a better word, right? Like your checklists are already there, the community's already there, culture's already there. Your other employees and all the excitement and the wins and the things that they're celebrating are already there, the resources, right? So adding new locations becomes rinse and repeat. Adding new employees becomes rinse and repeat because everything is sort of already systematized in this one place, right? So we see new locations typically will ramp 2 to 3 times faster than the one that came before it, and that compounds. And the same for employees.
Awesome.
Jess, you just opened a new location. Are you seeing the new ones open actually come online faster because you had a system?
Yeah, and it makes it more enjoyable. I was just telling somebody I had such a good time launching this, the takeover of that location and onboarding staff. Yeah, so it's a lot easier because it's all there. It's now just spreading the information to the next person.
I would add on, as I haven't opened a new location while using Prospr, but I could see where it would go well because having staff that already know the system, sometimes like when you talk about you as the owner as the bottleneck, we have staff on it. So they ask a question, like in my manager's chat, they're answering each other's questions. I don't even have to answer. And so when you have a system in place and they already have a messaging platform, you have more people that can answer and know where the resources are so that you, or, if you have one manager, like you're not the only one that can answer the question.
Yeah, I see that a lot too, Liz, like where they start to answer their own questions or they'll look through the bulletins or the chats and they're able to just get the information there. It makes it really easy for us. So it's already there.
Great. Well, we've gone over several topics here today. I really want to make sure that we kind of come to a close with some things that everyone can take away and take back to their own facilities and start to work through or test or implement. So I want to know what's one thing operators can improve immediately. What's one thing that you guys see regularly? It happens regularly, but because of your experience, you've learned a way to really kind of combat that. I'll
Yeah.
open it to anything.
I will say this. I will say that if they could take this one thing from this is it would be to put as much focus on staff and employee retention as we do, because I think as fitness studio owners we already do such a good job at always putting a lot of thought into member retention. But I think when you shift your mindset and think, how do I put that much thought and that many systems and little steps that we take to retain a member and do the same thing with our staff. And I think that alone is game changer when you put more thought into how do I retain my staff? How do I make their experience as employees of my company a lot better? That will improve employee retention. And it's because it's so expensive too. We know it's employee turnover is expensive, training a new staff member. So why not, make simple tweaks to improve and help us grow long term and keep those staff members for a long time.
Yeah, I would say from my standpoint, it's systems. So, like what you can put in place to make the job easier for them will help that you retain them. So, whatever the system that is, whatever partner you want to partner with, if you want to partner with somebody, but the system should be easy. And so they spend less time on that and they complement their job so that they can do. We're not hiring people in our industry to sit behind a computer at their desk, shut away. We're hiring them to interact with people and do that. So we need to make the systems and the processes as tight and as easy as possible. And that's like the first thing you can do is just wherever you can tighten them up, that's what you got to do.
Great advice. Erika, this one's primarily for you, but Jesse, Liz, feel free to chime in. What's the biggest workforce management mistake that you see happen over and over again?
Putting a new system in place and then not enforcing it and expecting Rome to get built in a day. Right? Like it will take time, right, for chaos to become not chaos. It takes time for people to learn a new system. It takes time for culture to sort of settle into a new system. Right? So when you bring new things in place, be it Prospr, be it ClubReady, be it whatever it is, right? Really being clear about why we're bringing it in, what you want people to do with it, and then giving it a little bit of breathing room to actually do what it's supposed to do.
Jesse, Liz, from the owner side of things, what do you guys see?
I think sometimes trying to just solve problems with more and more hiring, like that doesn't solve everything. So yeah, I'm with Eric on that one. It's just, really, we've added milestones. So like adding milestones to even an onboarding, breaking it up instead of just giving, word vomiting on these staff members with all the systems and all the plays. It's just breaking it up, helping them master one at a time. And I think that makes them perform better and documenting all of it so that it's there. So if somebody doesn't have a system today, it's as much as it seems like it's a headache to build, like, oh, I got to document everything. Documenting it once will save you a lot of time for years to come. So yeah.
I guess I would say the more work you can do in the front end will help you in the at the end. So, putting a system in place, anything in place, it's a lot of work and there's trial and error for sure, but you got to go all in and really give it a shot and do the front. If you do all the hard work up front, it pays off in the long run. And so that would be probably what I would say is and be open to change if it needs to change, but really give it a shot. I often see others like, oh, I tried that, but they never really, really tried it. Like, oh, that didn't work for me. And they didn't ever keep going. And it's like, you got to get through the uncomfortable parts, kind of got to walk through the fire to get to the other side where you got to like, it's turmoil to change a platform. It's turmoil to try something new, but you have to do the hard work for the end to be better.
Great. Um, I I could ask a million more questions, but I'd like to get to some of the ones that we have here in the chat from our viewers. Um, does Prospr integrate to ClubReady? Erika, I'll let you start with that one.
It does. So it is a seamless two-way sync on schedules. So you will build your schedule in ClubReady. It will live in Prospr. All subs and swaps will happen in Prospr. And when you approve, it will go back and be relayed in ClubReady.
And Jesse, Liz, anything to add there since you're ClubReady users yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I love when there's integrations with ClubReady. So yeah, Prospr was one that I was really excited for. Yeah, I think it integrates really nicely and it makes it. Yesterday is funny. I was texting Erika about somebody asked me about subbing and staff members subbing with each other and that part's really cool that instructors can do that on their own basically in the app. So
Awesome. Okay, we've got someone who struggles to get their team to adopt new tools and wants to know, how do you get your teams to actually use the tools that you're implementing? And this is
I
open
love
to
that
the
one.
group.
Yeah.
I love
It's
that
all you,
one.
Jesse. Let's hear it.
Because I get, and it's funny is because I always throw new tech at the team, new things for a lot, but I always get buy-in. I always first explain what the tool is, and I do ask, like Liz was saying, ask like, how do you think we could use it, and to get them excited about it. But I always do my very best to get buy-in from them and explain how it's going to impact their experience as employees and then our member experience. They care a lot about that. How is it going to benefit our members and how is it going to improve what we currently do? So I would say, you have to get buy-in and that helps with implementing it because then they're bought in and they, even if it's a little bit, there's a little bit of a struggle to get it launched or whatever, there's always hiccups with technology when it's new, but they're more open to they're not as frustrated when it happens because they know, okay, this is why we're doing it. So it's going to be worth it, so getting buy-in.
Yeah. I would say the same thing. I totally sell it first.
Yeah.
I make an effort to sell whatever I'm making them change, and then I don't give them a choice. And even when they say something, I'll be like in the way Prospr works, there's a shift pool. So your shift you want covered, it has to go in the shift pool. Where in our prior platform, people will be like, "Can anybody cover my Friday?" Right? And so now when somebody says a comment, "Can we cover my Friday?" I immediately will pop in and be like, "Please put it in the shift pool." please put it. So I'm like kind of annoying little, like, annoying little person in the background, and be like, oh, please use it this way. Please see this, right? So I'm just piping in and making them use the system. And then I find like once I start that, snowball, everybody else is like, oh, put it in the shift pool, grab it. Right. And so it's just like first you got to sell it and then you got to just force it.
Yep.
Okay. So we talked earlier about some communication and how important that is. Where do you all see communications breakdowns happen the most? Liz, I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, I'm like, gosh, I don't know. That's a big question. It depends on the employee, everybody has their skill set. I would say one of the reasons that I chose to switch to Prosper was when there's communication errors that affect my classes. So when a class goes uncovered and nobody knows, or when two people show up to teach the same class, that's a GM failing, right? There's too much human error in there, and that communication not only makes my employees very unhappy, but the staff that showed up to take either the clients that show up to there's no class, or the clients that show up to take one class and another class is being offered, right? That's really bad. And so to me, that's like the biggest offense. I think there's communication breakdowns happen everywhere. But for what affects what we do, that's the one that probably makes me the most angry is when, our reputation, if you will, is hindered because somebody failed to communicate well, and didn't do their job.
Got it. Okay. So last question. Where does employee disengagement typically start? Erika, I want to hear from you. That was a reaction. I need it.
Communication,
Poor communication. Yep.
right? Like if you're being stonewalled or you're not getting the support you need or you're not getting the information that you need and you're just kind of left to flounder, I think that really is where people start to feel disengaged. And I think the other one that Liz mentioned earlier is in when something needs to be fixed or done or managed or handled, which currently now goes to tickets, right? Overdue tickets create disengagement, right? Like if you're saying, hey, the lights out, the lights out, the lights out, and no one's fixing the lights, right? Like really what you're saying as a leader is that you don't care about your facilities, right? And so then why should the person care about your business?
Totally.
Yeah, I would say Jesse kind of commented on this, how he's using broadcast with new clients. So I think that you can see employee disengagement when our chats are dead. So I often have to coach GMs. It's like, you need to start that culture. It's like, shout out. She taught a great class. We converted 3 out of 3 new members today. Great job, so and so. She sold this outfit. We have a boutique in every store, right? And you start that culture and you can see the teams that don't have it, right? Nobody's piping in, they're not shouting each other out. And so you can see the disengagement. They're not bought in anymore. They're not taking classes either. They don't want to be part of it. Like you can see it happening right from that chat that's like they're no longer participating in.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the same. Disengagement happens with lack of communication. So it's always keeping open line of communication with staff and giving them compliments. Everybody likes compliments. I recently started sharing a lot. We do a lot of surveying, so our clients get surveys for X coach for every coach they take, and I share them with them. Luckily they're always good, so I screenshot it from our system and I send it into the bulletin, and they all react to it. The little likes or the emojis, they reply to each other. And they like that. I think that keeps them engaged. And again, going always back to people like to be good at what they're doing, and that makes them feel engaged and a part of a team. And it helps a lot. It helps a lot with that. So keeping them engaged.
Well, guys, this has been awesome. I mean, the amount of information has been great. I really appreciate all three of you coming on with us today. Thank you, Jesse, Erika, Liz. Really appreciate your time, your insight, everything. I do want to let everyone know that there will be a recording sent out for everyone who joined today, or even those that registered and ended up not being able to be with us. I also want to mention that Prospr is offering complimentary operational audits for a limited number of multi-location operators. So Erika is the person to reach out to for that. There's her contact info on the screen right there. And so if you got any questions, please reach out to Erika. Again, there'll be an email sent out for everyone with the recording. And we appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.